Welcome to An Interview in History. This episode takes place in March of 1891. And this week, we'll be talking with Phineas Taylor Barnum, or P.T. Barnum. He was an American showman, businessman, and politician, remembered for promoting celebrated hoaxes and founding the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus with James Anthony Bailey. He was also an author, publisher, and philanthropist, although he said of himself, "I am a showman by profession, and all the gilding shall make nothing else of me." According to Barnum's critics, his personal aim was to put money in his coffers. The adage, "there's a sucker born every minute," has frequently been attributed to him, although no evidence exists that he had indeed coined the phrase. Welcome, Mr. Barnum.
Oh, please, dispense with formalities. I'm just a regular guy. Call me P.T.
Okay, perfect, thanks. Let's get started then. Talk to me about your family life.
I was born in Bethel, Connecticut, July 5 of 1810. I'm the son of an innkeeper, tailor, and storekeeper, Philo Barnum, and my father's second wife, Irene Taylor. My maternal grandfather, Phineas Taylor, was a Whig, legislator, landowner, justice of the peace, and lottery schemer, who had a great influence upon me. I had 4 siblings, Elder, Mary, Cordelia, and Elmira.
I remember reading that you got into business when you were pretty young. Tell me about that.
Yes, I became a small business owner in my early 20s and founded a weekly newspaper before moving to New York City in 1834. I embarked on an entertainment career in 1835 when I was 25. First with a variety troupe called Barnum's Grand Scientific and Musical Theatre, and soon after by purchasing Scudder's American Museum, which I renamed Barnum's American Museum. I improved it, upgrading the building and adding exhibits.
And what exactly was the museum used for?
I used the museum as a platform to promote human curiosities such as the Fiji mermaid and General Tom Thumb. The first exhibition I purchased was that of a blind and almost completely paralyzed slave woman named Joyce Heth, whom an acquaintance was billing around Philadelphia as George Washington's 161-year-old former nurse. Slavery was already outlawed in New York, but I found a loophole that allowed me to lease Heth for a year for $1,000, borrowing $500 to complete the sale. I made her work for 10 to 12 hours per day, but she died in February of 1836 at no more than 80 years of age. I then hosted a live autopsy of Heth's body in a New York saloon to demonstrate her actual age before spectators, paying 50 cents each. I had a year of mixed success with my first variety troupe, Barnum's Grand Scientific and Musical Theatre. It became a popular showplace. I added a lighthouse lamp that attracted attention up and down Broadway and flags along the roof's edge that attracted attention at daytime, while giant paintings of animals between the upper windows drew attention from pedestrians. The roof was transformed into a strolling garden with a view of the city, where I launched hot air balloon rides daily. A changing series of live acts and curiosities were added to the exhibits of stuffed animals, including albinos, giants, little people, jugglers, magicians, exotic women, detailed models of cities and famous battles, and a menagerie of animals.
P.T., what was your first major hoax?
I wouldn't call them hoaxes, but in 1842 I introduced a creature with the body of a monkey and the tail of a fish known as Fiji mermaid. I leased it from a fellow museum owner, Moss Kimball of Boston, who became my friend, confidant, and collaborator. These were all advertisements to draw attention to the museum. I don't believe in duping the public, but I believe in first attracting and then pleasing them.
What was next, P.T.?
Well, sir, I followed the Mermaid Act by exhibiting the 4-year-old actor Charles Stratton, billed as the 11-year-old General Tom Thumb. Stratton was taught to imitate famous figures such as Hercules and Napoleon. Then what was next? In 1843, I hired the Native American dancer Barnum He, the first of many natives. During 1844 and 45, I toured with General Tom Thumb in Europe and met Queen Victoria, who was amused but saddened by Stratton, and the event was a publicity coup. It opened the door to visits with royalty throughout Europe, including the Tsar of Russia, which enabled me to acquire many new attractions, including automations and other mechanical marvels. By this time, I bought other museums, including artist Rembrandt Peale's Philadelphia Museum, which at the time was the nation's first major museum. By late 1846, my museum was drawing 400,000 visitors per year. Wow, that's amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about your family life? Well, let's see. On November 8, 1829, I married Charity Hallett, and we have 4 children: Caroline, Helen Maria, Frances Irena, and Pauline Taylor. My beautiful wife died on November 19, 1873, and then in 1874, I married Nancy Fish, the daughter of my close friend John Fish, and she is 40 years my junior. Okay, that's interesting. Let's switch subjects. Talk to me about your political life, PT. For a time, I was significantly involved in politics. I mainly focused on race, slavery, and sectionalism in the period preceding the American Civil War. I opposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which supported slavery, and left the Democratic Party because it had endorsed slavery. I then joined the new anti-slavery Republican Party. You know, politics were always distasteful to me, but I was elected to the Connecticut General Assembly in 1865 as a Republican representing Fairfield. I hired spies to acquire insider information on the New York and the New Haven rail lines and exposed a secret that would raise fares by 20%. During the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, I said that a human soul that God has created and Christ died for is not to be trifled with. It may tenant the body of a Chinaman, a Turk, an Arab, or a Hottentot. It is still an immortal spirit. But wait, didn't you own slaves for a while? I acknowledge that I had owned slaves when I lived in the South, and I whipped my slaves. I ought to have been whipped 1,000 times for this myself. But then I was a Democrat, one of those nondescript Democrats who are Northern men with Southern principles. Didn't you run for Congress as well? Yes, I did. I campaigned for the U.S. Congress in 1867, and lost to my third cousin, William Henry Barnum. Then in 1875, I served as mayor of Bridgeport, Connecticut, to improve the water supply, bring gas lighting to streets, and enforce liquor and prostitution laws. That was a pretty interesting political career. I understand you had other businesses as well. Tell us about that. I had a few. I ran a general store, a book auctioning trade, real estate speculation, and a statewide lottery network. I started a weekly newspaper in 1831 called the Herald of Freedom in Bethel, Connecticut. My editorials against elders of local churches led to libel suits and prosecution, and I was imprisoned for 2 months. Okay, wasn't expecting that. Wait, there's more. I created America's first aquarium and expanded the wax figure section of my museum. My 7 grand salons demonstrated the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The collections expanded to 4 buildings, and I published a museum guidebook that claimed 850,000 curiosities. Late in 1860, Siamese twins Chang and Eng emerged from retirement and appeared at my museum for 6 weeks. I also introduced Zip the Pinhead, a microcephalic black man who spoke a mysterious language created by me. Then discovered Giantess Anna Swan and Dwarf Commodore Nutt, a new Tom Thumb with whom I visited President Abraham Lincoln at the White House. So, give me your take on the American public. No man ever went broke overestimating the ignorance of the American public. The common man, no matter how sharp and tough, actually enjoys having the wool pulled over his eyes and makes it easier for the puller. If you remember anything from this interview, remember, however mysterious his nature, however ignorant the doctor, however imperfect the present state of physical science, the patronage and the success of quacks and quackeries are infinitely more wonderful than those of honest and laborious men of science and their careful experiments. Okay, I will remember that. Quite an interesting view. Now, when did the circus come into being? I actually did not enter the circus business until I was 60 years old. I established P.T. Barnum's Grand Traveling Museum, Menagerie, Caravan, and Hippodrome in Devlin, Wisconsin in 1870 with William Cameron. It was a traveling circus, menagerie, and museum of freaks that assumed various names: P.T. Barnum's Traveling World's Fair, Great Roman Hippodrome, and the Greatest Show on Earth, and P.T. Barnum's Greatest Show on Earth and the Great London Circus, Sanger's Royal British Menagerie, and the Grand International Allied Shows United. After an 1881 merger with James Bailey and James L. Hutchinson, it soon shortened to Barnum and Bailey's. This was the first circus to display 3 rings. The show's first primary attraction was Jumbo, an African elephant that I purchased in 1882 from the London Zoo. The Barnum and Bailey Circus still contained acts similar to the traveling menagerie, including acrobats, freak shows, and General Tom Thumb. I persisted in growing the circus in spite of fires, train disasters, and other setbacks, and I was aided by circus professionals who ran the daily operations. Bailey and I parted ways in 1885, but we rejoined in 1888 with the Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth. I was among the first circus owners to move circus by train, a suggestion by Bailey and other business partners, and probably the first to own my own train. I also became known as the Shakespeare of advertising because of my innovative and impressive ideas. In this new business venture, I leaned on the advice of Bailey and other business partners. That's really interesting how that all came together, and it sounded very difficult as well. I understand you were somewhat of a philanthropist as well. Yes, I enjoyed what I've publicly dubbed profitable philanthropy. If by improving and beautifying my city, Bridgeport, Connecticut, and adding to the pleasures and prosperity of my neighbors, and I can do so at a profit, the incentive to do good works will be twice as strong as if it were otherwise. Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So, who then did you donate to? I was appointed to the Board of Trustees of Tufts University prior to its founding. I extended several significant contributions to the school, including a gift of $50,000 in 1883 to establish a museum to be known as Barnum Museum of Natural History and hall for the Department of Natural History. Tufts made Jumbo the elephant the school's mascot. That's actually very interesting. I have a couple more questions for you. First, can you give me your take on life in general? Let me see. Whatever you do, do it with all your might. Work at it, early and late, in season and out of season, not leaving a stone unturned, and never, never deferring for a single hour that which can be done just as well now. And finally, what do you see as your greatest achievement? There is no greater picture than that of 10,000 smiling children, no brighter music than their clear ringing laughter. That I, with my small amusements, have created such precious art is one of my life's proudest achievements. Well said. P.T., thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule. And now I see why you are the greatest showman on earth. I can hardly wait to see what's next for you. Thank you. This has truly been a pleasure for me as well. Phineas Taylor Barnum died from a stroke at his home in 1891 at the age of 80. He's buried in Mountain Grove Cemetery in Bridgeport, Connecticut, a cemetery that he designed. So join us next week when we talk with Phoebe Ann Mosey, also known as the incomparable Annie Oakley. Until then, take care.